When a huge brown bear charges at you, don't move at all, even if it's viciously tearing at your back and its sharp claws are scratching your skin. Being dragged in and swinging around is so painful, but you have to hold your breath and endure it. Brother, crushing my head! The two heroes pounced on him and started to make a lot of noise. When he thought the man was dead, he would relax his guard. This was his chance to fight back. Old Lee was incredibly lucky. After being crushed by a 300-kilogram bear, he survived. His teammates found him barely alive, with rags stopping the bleeding. His back had a horrific wound. They stitched him up and left quickly as wild men were chasing them. They made a stretcher from branches, and 6 took turns carrying him along the mountain path. As snow blocked the mountain, they reached a slope where they couldn't carry the stretcher. Some complained they wouldn't make it back with him. Someone covered his eyes with a cloth. Under pressure, the captain raised his gun, but couldn't shoot, remembering his bond with Old Lee. He offered 300 wen for 3 to stay with Old Lee. His son's friend Abu, and a money-driven guy, Venom, stayed. Under pressure from everyone, the captain raised his gun, ready to shoot. But thinking about the bond he had with Old Lee, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. He offered a reward of 300 yuan to leave 3 people behind to take care of Old Lee, accepting fate. Old Lee's son, his son's friend Abu, and a guy who only cared about money, Venom, decided to stay behind. Venom waited for Old Lee to die. Old Lee blinked after 3 days. Venom moved, but Old Lee's son stopped him, calling Venom a devil. Venom ran out of patience, and he lay down beside Lao Li and said, "If you keep dragging it on like this, when the savages come, your son's life will be in danger. If you want to die, just blink, and I'll help you. Yes, it's better to die quickly than to be a burden half dead." Lao Li blinked silently. That's right. Venom quickly tied him up with his hands and covered his mouth and nose tightly. Then, Old Lee's son came back and knocked Venom down, pointing a gun at him and loudly calling for his teammates. Venom, experienced and cunning, snatched the gun away and said, "This is what your father wanted." But Old Lee's son wouldn't listen and cursed him as a devil. Then Venom covered his mouth with one hand and stabbed down with a knife. Watching his son die tragically in front of him, Old Lee's eyes widened, veins bulging, but his severely injured body couldn't move an inch. When another teammate returned, Venom told him that a group of 20 wild men was about to arrive nearby. They dragged Old Lee into the grave and ran away. His teammates followed. Old Lee woke up, in pain, and crawled out. He went to his son, determined for revenge. He crawled, found an animal carcass, broke its bones, and ate the marrow. He crawled towards his teammates. He crawled over to his son's side, determined to live and seek revenge. Gathered his gear, wrapped himself in fur, and crawled with one hand. He found the carcass of an animal, broke its bones, and greedily gnawed at the marrow inside. He crawled in the direction of his teammates. When he got to the riverbank to drink some water, it leaked out from the wound on his neck. He bent down by the river and gulped down a mouthful of water, which leaked out from the wound on his neck. He choked and coughed violently. The wound was small, but if not treated properly, it could be fatal. He poured a bit of gunpowder on it, and then used a piece of burning dry grass to ignite the wound. The immense pain knocked him out cold. At night he lit a campfire and caught a small bird. He was so exhausted, covered in wounds, and suffering from hunger and cold, but he still had a long way to go to get back to the camp. Misfortunes never come alone. A group of wild people arrived at the riverbank, and Old Lee quickly retreated into the water, hiding behind a rock wall. When he looked up, the wild people were right above him. They spotted the backpack on the ground and then found him. Old Lee turned and desperately dove into the water as bullets whizzed past him, the rushing current pushing him along. He floated in the river. He grabbed driftwood, floated to shore, and started a fire. His wounds scabbed, ate a fish, but was still hungry. At night, a light woke him. He simply dried his clothes, and the wounds he had been scratched by the brown bear had already scabbed over. Seeing that Hee-jung's fishing trap had yielded some fish, he grabbed a live fish and chewed it in big mouthfuls. But this little food was not enough, and he would surely die if he continued like this. At night, a burst of firelight woke him up. Old Lee, starving, met a wild person who had killed a yak. He begged for food and got liver to survive. A snowstorm hit, and he passed out. The wild person treated his wounds and sheltered him. When Old Lee awoke, the wild person was gone, leaving a yak leg. Later, Old Lee rescued a kidnapped girl, but was chased by criminals, leading to a fall off a cliff. The raw blood tasted disgusting. The wild person saw his will to live. A snowstorm hit. The wild person treated his wounds. He dragged Old Lee inside. When Old Lee woke, the wild person was gone. The racial divide didn't sever their bond. Old Lee found people who kidnapped a wild girl. He hid. Old Lee rode fast. When he woke, he couldn't believe he was alive. He dragged it inside. When Old Lee woke up again, the wild person was gone, but had left him a leg of the yak. The racial divide didn't sever the bond of humanity. Continuing on his journey, Old Lee discovered another group of people who had kidnapped a wild girl. It looked like they were up to no good. Old Lee hid behind a horse and seized the chance to rescue the girl. But these desperate criminals were quick to retaliate. They soon chased after him. Old Lee rode his horse at full speed, but he was forced to the edge of a cliff and fell straight down. When he woke up again, he couldn't even believe he was still alive. He had fractures all over his body, and his only chance of survival in the freezing cold was to cut open the belly of the dead horse, taking out all its organs, heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys, until there was nothing left, and then crawl inside, bit by bit. He held the horse, feeling warmth that eased his cold, and he slept. Snow stopped, and Old Lee lived. He dressed and continued through snow, with no food or vehicle, only a stick. His thought was revenge. He carved into the cave. The venom killed my son. After some time, he saw a fire. It was his companions. They were shocked he was alive and took him. After walking for an unknown time, one night he saw a fire. It was his companions. Everyone couldn't believe he was still alive, and they brought him back to the camp. Old Lee told the captain about the venom's atrocities, and the captain was furious, grabbing his gun to deal with the traitor. But the venom had already caught wind of it and fled, stealing all of the captain's belongings. But Old Lee wouldn't let him go. Killing the venom and avenging his son was his only purpose for surviving. He and the captain hurriedly set off to chase after the venom, arriving at the foot of the snowy mountain. They split up to search, and the captain soon found some footprints and quickly located the venom. Before he could even pull the trigger, the venom shot him down. When Lao Li heard the gunshot, he rushed over and looked up, only to see the captain's cold body. Blood poured as venom took the captain's body up the mountain. In a clearing, venom shot at Old Lee, proving the hunter wasn't special. Venom approached, flipping the body. The captain was tricked. Old Lee fired, hitting Venom, who fled. Old Lee chased him into the snowy forest. It turned out the captain had been tricked. Old Lee, on horseback, suddenly fired his gun, hitting the venom in the shoulder, who hurriedly fled into the jungle. Old Lee chased him relentlessly, and the two engaged in a life-and-death pursuit in the snow. As they ran, the venom tumbled down a slope, and Old Lee followed, both of them exhausted and dazed. The venom was starting to feel scared, but the fire of revenge burned strong in Old Lee's heart. After a fierce struggle, the venom was knocked down to the ground. Just then, a group of wild men on horseback came by, and Old Lee pushed the venom into the river, where he was swept away into the hands of the wild men. A scream echoed, and finally, his revenge was fulfilled. But facing the brutal wild men, Old Lee knew he couldn't escape either. However, the wild men just walked right past him. It turned out there was a wild girl in their group, whom he had saved before. In the end, Old Lee survived. What kept him going was not just the will to live, but also the protection of love.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos.